Welcome to Powering Through Life, the podcast. I'm your host, Teresa Sims. I'm a coach, an author, wife, mom, survivor, and thriver. Each week on Powering Through Life, my guest and I will discuss a special topic that's close to their heart. Together, we will explore the challenges they have faced in life and learn what strategies and tools they have used to power through their life. So get ready to be inspired, motivated, and become a thriver. Hi, and welcome to another segment of Powering Through Life. Today, my guest is Meg Hall, and Meg is an experienced nurse and healthcare executive with a bachelor's in nursing and psychology and a master's in healthcare administration. She's moved on from the healthcare career to a life of leadership coaching and natural healing. She has a strong desire to help others through many of life's journeys and applies not only her knowledge, but her firsthand experience in many of these challenges. And today, I really like the topic that Meg has. It's facing a life-altering medical threat. Because at 45, Meg was told by her doctor that if she didn't change her life, she would be dead in 5 to 7 years. Wow, must have been really incredible hearing that. Meg would like to share what led to that moment and her journey to a healthy, happy life several years later. So Meg, welcome to Powering Through Life.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here and honored to be able to address this topic and talk with your listeners.
That's fantastic. I'm really happy to have you here. And this topic has me fascinated. So jump right in, please, Meg, and tell us the story behind how all this played out.
Sure. So I was married for many years, my first marriage, and it was not a healthy relationship at all. It was a very toxic marriage. And I was the only breadwinner, and I was also in charge of the house and the yard and laundry and cooking and the kids and all of that, in addition to working at least 60 to 70 hours a week at my career. In addition to that, I had a side business that I was doing. So clearly was way overextending myself and had been doing that for many, many years. And so what happened is basically all of that caught up with me. And I had left healthcare administration for a while and was doing hospice work, which that alone was life-altering. And working with people who are facing the end of their life, they're so honest, they're so blunt, they let go of so much of the control that we try to have in our lives prior to that. And one of those patients that I was caring for was my previous medical director that I had worked with in that same organization, but a previous position. And I was caring for him as he was facing his end of life. And one of the things he told me is, I don't know what's going on with you, but you've lost the light in your eyes, and I'm worried about you. And, I took that somewhat seriously because I really respected this individual and his opinions and his thoughts and all that. But a part of me was just kind of living in this world of denial and just marching on every day. And so it wasn't until about 3-4 months later, I went in for my annual physical. And also because I was having a bad bout of bronchitis, I went into my doctor and he did all the things for a physical. I was also struggling with severe migraines, about 20 days a month having migraines. And so we were working, we met and did the whole history thing. And then he did some labs and he called me back about a day or two later. And he said, I need you to come back and see me. And so I'm like, oh, he's going to God on me because I'm overweight. And so I went in and he said, sit down, we need to have a talk. Okay. And so he went through the fact that I was having around 20 days of migraines a month. I was working ridiculous hours. I was stressing myself. My cholesterol was elevated. I was overweight. I had chronic bronchitis. I had high blood pressure. I was struggling with depression. And we had just gone through addressing my hypothyroidism.
Oh, goodness.
And he said, and I was a smoker at that time. And he said, I just want to tell you that if you don't change your life, I'm sorry to say you'll probably be dead in 5 to 7 years with all of the multiple medical issues that you have going on and the incredible stress that you submit yourself to. And I just sat in the chair kind of dumbfounded because I had a lot of plans for my retirement someday. And, I ride motorcycle. And I said something to him about, well, I've got all these plans and I love to ride motorcycle. He said, do you want an oxygen tank on the back of your motorcycle? And I was just like, oh. So he said, I need you to go home and think and really reassess your life and then come back and we're going to talk about what you want to do. Do you want to continue this path? And I'll basically help you through it to the point you get to palliative care. Or do you want to start tackling some of these things and making some life changes? So as you can tell, as I left that doctor's office, I was a bit speechless.
No doubt. I would be too. That's like being hit between the eyes with a 2x4. But
Exactly.
do you find that sometimes when you're caught in those situations in life where you really feel like you have no choice, you have to do everything, you're dependent on to do everything, you're expected to do everything, you really just, your own health just is not even on the list anywhere. You're not on the list anywhere, right?
Right.
And it takes something severe like that to wake us up.
It does. I think I was just living in survival mode, thinking I was going to survive it. And yeah, it really, and I've helped other people kind of have those serious talks, I guess you would say, to help them realize kind of what they're doing since that time. But that was really what I needed, as harsh as it may sound. It was what I needed to come out of denial and realize that my life was truly a disaster.
So what were the steps that you went about once you recovered from the visit? What were the steps you took to work towards a newer lifestyle?
Yeah, after, like you said, after a few days after recovering from that message and kind of processing it, I thought, okay, what do I need to do? What is the most urgent things that I need to do, and how can I do them? And so a couple things came to mind is, number one, I needed to quit smoking. Number two, I needed to deal with this migraine issue because on top of everything else I was doing, I was in pain, 2/3 of the month, and struggling with seeing and vomiting and all of the things, lovely things that go with migraines. And so I just sat there and thought, okay, what steps can I take? I also began to realize that I needed to leave my marriage. It was very toxic, and I had not left because he was very threatening about my leaving. And so I said, okay, I need to go to counseling so I can figure out a plan of how I'm going to leave and leave safely.
Yeah.
And so when I went back to talk to the doctor, I said, okay, here's the things that I think I need to do. I need to work on my migraines because that is causing me an immense amount of distress. I need to go to counseling and figure out a plan to improve my quality of life, and get out of my marriage. And I said, and then on top of that, I need to quit smoking. So smoking, migraines, and going to counseling to kind of figure it out. And I said, when I take some time to really think about this, I'm very overwhelmed with what you said. But when I take and segment it and just say these 2 or 3 things is what I'm going to start on, I said, I think that helps. So he recommended a quit smoking program that had many components to it: medication, patches, counseling, checkpoints, other behavioral kinds of components to it as well, to really take a look at why was I smoking, why was I eating too much, all of those, kind of get to the why behind it. Yeah. So I did that. I went to a neurologist. It took about 6 months to get my migraines better. But over time, I got down to probably 4 or 5 days a month with a migraine. Now I'm down to 1 or 2. So Feels much better. I quit smoking. I went through this 3-month program and it was phenomenal. Unfortunately, I did gain some more weight while I quit smoking, which is pretty typical. A lot of people do that.
It's the
So
habit of putting something into your mouth
it
more than it
is.
is what it is. I mean, you do get
Exactly.
the nicotine, which is addictive all on its own, but I mean, and can speak to that because I'm an
Mhm.
ex-smoker as well. So
Mhm.
I know the habits that are involved, and
Mhm.
it's either putting the cigarette in your mouth or it's putting food in your mouth. It's a
Right.
habitual thing. So break the pattern, and yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that would, what I did was basically take those first three things and say, I need to conquer these over the next 6 months. In addition, of course, the third one is getting into counseling. So I committed to that. I also started setting a few little boundaries at home. Um, and, my kids were teenagers. So, I asked them basically to help. And, if I wasn't going to be home till late, to please cook dinner, and those kinds of things. And my son was very much into cooking, so he embraced that.
nice.
The meals were maybe not what I would have made, but they were good and they fed the family. So that's what mattered.
That's right.
And so then I think I got this boost of self confidence when I accomplished quitting smoking, when I was able to partner with a doctor to get my migraines under much better control, when I went to counseling and started to see really how messed up my marriage was and kind of start talking about the steps that I needed to move forward.
Yeah.
So it was about a year later, I think, is when I left my ex husband.
Sound like you had an exceptional plan and a lot of support, which is
Right.
really, really important when you're dealing with anything. I mean, you can't always, and it's not, we're communal people. We shouldn't have to do everything on our own. There are people out there that will help if we just ask.
Exactly. Yes. And accept that too.
Yeah, yeah. And welcome the help. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's, as long as it's constructive help.
Helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. How difficult was it for you, because you had to do everything for so long? How difficult was it for you to give up the control of those little pieces to someone else and then stand back and let it happen?
I think initially that wasn't an issue because I just wanted any kind of help I could get.
Good.
So initially, I didn't feel that sense of control. My kids started pitching in, helping with the laundry, and ended up with some unusual colored fabrics. So my control issues kind of came back then and said, okay, let me sort it. And then if you want to do it, um, we also had some dry cleaning clothes washed and things like that. But I really started to look and say, in the big scheme of things, how important is this? And I think that was one of the few times in my life I'd really done that. You know, I'd said the saying many times, don't sweat the small stuff, but I wasn't really living it,
Right.
and picking and choosing my battles.
Yeah, that's the important part is, yeah, we can say we're giving up control, but actually letting it go, let it happen,
Mm-hmm.
accept it. And you're right, setting boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
picking battles, if you
Mm-hmm.
have to battle,
Mm-hmm.
choose. And it sounds like you had a good system in place.
I did, and the other interesting thing was as I was working through leaving, I realized material things don't matter that much.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I gave up the house that I had bought. I gave up the business that we had built. I gave up a lot of those kinds of things, a lot of furniture, that kind of stuff, because I realized it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter.
Not when your physical life is threatened like that.
Exactly.
It does not. You have to, and you're smart for re-examining so many areas and facets of your
Mm-hmm.
life
Yeah, I
because
think that's a really good point that, you know, um, you really have to do a full reassessment to say what really matters and what do I want to put my energy into.
exactly.
It was interesting at that time I was working in hospice and palliative care. And one of the things we taught our patients is you have this finite amount of energy every day. Choose how you want to spend it.
Yeah.
And that's what I needed to do for myself as well.
Yeah, I would agree. And I have a friend that she's former physio and chronic pain management specialist, and she's forever telling people that she works with is to work smarter, not harder.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really thinking about the tasks you have to do and
Mhm.
then finding new and creative ways to complete them that don't
Mhm.
deplete your energy or cause you physical pain or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be, right? In the
Mhm.
case of the migraines, yeah, I understand how those can debilitate a person.
Mhm.
I've been there, done that in my young
Mhm.
years too.
Mhm.
And they are horrendous,
Yes.
horrendous. But a lot of them are caused by stress. And
Mhm.
it's also our bodies telling us that you're not paying attention. There's something I'm trying to tell you. You're not listening to me. I'm going to keep pushing until you stop. And
Exactly.
you're going to listen.
Exactly.
And that's
Yeah.
why does it take us to get to that point,
Oh
right?
no, that's a really good question. The other part of the migraine treatment was not just medication, but it was also hygiene. So, nutritional hygiene, sleep hygiene, identifying some of those triggers that really set, in addition to stress was definitely a big one.
Yeah,
But there were other things that, I was getting 3 and 4 hours of sleep a night. Well, that wears you down after a while.
true.
And so, that neurologist kind of looked at me and said, I can do my part, but you have to do your part as well.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. And a friend of my dear friend of mine calls that systems maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
It's our maintenance. And
Mm-hmm.
so many of us ignore it, thinking we're doing well, we're
Mm-hmm.
exercising, we're
Mm-hmm.
getting our fresh air, we're drinking water, but there's
Mm-hmm.
so much more to it
Is
that
there
it's
is.
just, we don't dedicate enough time to us ourselves
Mm-hmm.
to stay whole and healthy in the long
Absolutely.
run. So, Meg, what were the biggest changes that you feel led to your full recovery and beyond that?
Yeah, I think, full recovery took at least 10 years. As far as the physical recovery, the emotional recovery was even a little bit longer.
Mhm.
And what I had to recognize is that, I had grown up in a home where I was constantly belittled and criticized and all that. I married a man who very much belittled and criticized. And so it took me several years to realize who I was, that I was a worthy person, that I was a good person, that I had all these great qualities and I deserved to be loved and to love someone. And so I started dating shortly after I got divorced, and was that a disaster? Because as I tell people, my picker was still very broke. And
Yeah,
so
I
I
could
was,
could imagine.
yeah. And so I was picking the same kind of people, over and over. People that wanted a sugar mama, people that wanted, someone to wait on them, care for them, all that. And so it took several years before I really learned to love myself and started having some healthy relationships.
So
Um,
how did you go from um, picking the wrong ones to saying, okay, did you make a list of pros and cons of what you wanted and what you would is be a no-go kind of thing? Or like how did you justify that you needed to move away from this type to another? How did you find that balance, like that travel, that journey, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think with supportive friends, still doing some ongoing counseling, and I started writing down the common threads of the people that I was picking, and looking at those patterns and going, "Oh, do you really want that in your life for the rest of your life? No." So then I started saying, what are some characteristics of someone that I truly admire? And, if they were available, even married men, if they were available, that would be somebody like I would like to be with. And so I just kind of made this list of characteristics. I mean, it started off very simple of they need to have a car, they need to have a home, they need to have a job, they need to have a good relationship with their family. And if not, I need to understand why.
Mhm.
um, they need to be not be selfish, so be very selfless and giving and caring instead of the takers that I spent my life with.
Yeah.
And so I did actually make some lists, and then I would start to, when I start having a conversation with someone, I was doing online dating, read somebody's profile, I'm like, nope, nope, and delete them and then move on. And so, eventually, it was probably 15 years later, not quite 13 years later, when I met my now husband. And it was like, this is what I'm looking for. we were able to have intellectual conversations. We were able to discuss all kinds of pleasant but difficult topics. We had fun together. He was very independent, had his own life, his own house, his own car, his own career, all of those kinds of things, and was very caring and nurturing. Would care when I say I had a really bad day, wanted to hear why and how he could support that. So, people said to me many, many times over my life, if you don't love yourself, you can't love anyone else.
Yeah.
And I think that's somewhat true, but I think it's more true that if you don't love yourself, you won't allow yourself to be loved.
Oh, that's a very good point. Very good point. Because if it doesn't start within, you can keep looking for the dream person or your whoever you're looking for and what you truly want. But if you don't do the inner work, it's not going to work at all. It's going to be a repeat of everything. And because our own patterns come back into play so often, it doesn't matter what the patterns in the other person are doing.
Right.
It's our own patterns that come up, and you must deal with those first.
Absolutely.
How
The other thing my
did
daughter and I talked about was that, my mother was in a very, very dysfunctional relationship, and she stayed in that until the day he died. And then she found her true love. I stayed in my marriage for a little over 20 years, and then I cut the cord and found true love. And so my daughter's like, I was sharing with her, we need to learn from these generational habits and these generational situations so that we do better.
Yeah.
My parents were very physically abusive to me. I was not, but I was somewhat absent in my children's life. And so we talk about, how she can do that differently and not recreate either one of those, certainly not the abusive, but then also not the absent parent situation either.
No, that's a beautiful gift you're giving your daughter. How about your son? Have you had those types of conversations with your son as well? Or
I have had them early on. In the last 3 years, unfortunately, he married someone who doesn't want him to have contact with anyone else. So he kind of repeated, unfortunately, my situation before he could really get his self-esteem there where, he realized how much he deserves. He's just a beautiful person, very loving, very caring, but doesn't have that sense of self, similar to how I was when I was young. And so, unfortunately, he got into a very difficult relationship. So yeah, I feel very sad about that. And I just keep hoping that one day he will reach that point that I reached and sooner, where he says enough is enough and I'm going to take care of myself and believe in myself.
Yeah. And that's the mother's wish for the children is that, they're happy, healthy and whole and loved. And I'm positive you will be there when he comes back.
Absolutely.
And, it's a difficult road to travel. It's a difficult road when you don't know who you are. But then as you start to discover who you are, there can be setbacks because, you could get another health diagnosis or somebody could say a comment that, triggers and then you go back. But, it's always the constant moving forward that is really key in all of this, isn't it? We do all take a step back every once in a while and regret it, but regrets are a waste of time. You have to learn from them and just move on and keep going. And that's where the excitement happens. And had you not kept going, you wouldn't have your husband now.
Right. And I wouldn't have my grandbaby.
There you go.
So, there's all these joys now that I have in life that, and that's one of the things why I do, life and leadership coaching, why I do holistic healing and energy healing, is I want to help people not have to go that journey the whole life like my mother did, or half a life like I did, and really be able to get these awarenesses, move to a better spot sooner in their life. So it doesn't have some consequences like mine did with my son, or just even delaying, that I was 50 some years old before I found true love. And so I want other people to, number one, recognize how important it is to care for ourselves in many ways, and to appreciate who we are and love who we are.
Absolutely. So important. And, each one of us has our own journey but
Mm-hmm.
we are part of a larger community. And the more we share on these
Mm-hmm.
topics, like people your mother's age and my mother's age,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure for us too, when we were
Mm-hmm.
younger, you weren't
Mm-hmm.
supposed to talk about anything that
Yeah.
was wrong, and you just deal with it and suck it up and move on.
Smile and pretend. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And how devastating that is
Yeah.
to the being that we are.
Mm-hmm.
And, it kind of rots your soul away
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of cases. But the more we talk about these
Mm-hmm.
types of things that have gone on, the more communication we have,
Mm-hmm.
the more the future generations are going to
Mm-hmm.
know that, okay, we can learn something from
Right.
these older people
Yep.
that have the wisdom and have the experience. They might be feeling uncomfortable in their relationship,
Mm-hmm.
or in their own self, but not sure what to do about it or what steps to take. So, honestly, what steps, if someone, you saw a young woman in the position you were in,
Mm-hmm.
what advice would you give? Or a young man for that matter?
Yeah. Yeah. I think a part of it is really doing some soul searching to see how how am I right now? How am I feeling? Do I have joy in my life? Do I get reciprocated what I give? Um, do is there just we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, and so we need to have the best experience that we can. So if we're not in that place where we don't appreciate and love ourselves, where we don't feel like we're having joy, and not everything in life obviously is joyful, but do we have the energy to take on those challenges when they arrive, and then come through them on the other side even wiser and in better space? So I think the first thing is really doing an inventory and getting honest with yourself. What is going on in your life? What is going on in your relationship? What's going on in your job? What's going on with your friendships and your family? And where are those states? And really doing an inventory of that. And then if you identify some areas that really are a struggle for you, maybe it's medical, whatever it is, then sitting down with someone, whoever that is, and saying, okay, this is not working for me. How can I get through this? How can I get beyond this? How can I get out of this, whatever the situation is? And developing a plan and having a support system to help you through that plan.
Exactly. And I've spoken with other guests that we've had who talk about support systems, and they are fantastic because we
Mm-hmm.
need them desperately. You don't have to take the first one you find. If it
Right.
doesn't feel right, if it doesn't feel like it's sitting well within your soul, and you feel comfortable, go find another one. There
Mm-hmm.
are there are many out there. Find the
Mm-hmm.
best one that works for you, because they're not all cookie cutter.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has a different experience where they go. So be choosy, do your due diligence, right?
I
And
agree. And find a way to be your authentic self.
absolutely.
I
When you were
was
talking
somebody
about the
else.
list of
Mm-hmm.
things that you would accept, and things that are going on in your body, I think a nice little exercise to add to that as coaches,
Mm-hmm.
uh, to rate the emotional attachment you have to that, how that
Mm-hmm.
thing makes you feel,
Mm-hmm.
with one or zero being the lowest, and 10, it makes me so happy. I just want to just jump up
Mm-hmm.
and scream with excitement,
Yeah,
rate those things. If they aren't bringing you joy, those numbers will tell you something.
absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I think another method to do that, which is very similar, but a little bit of a different twist, is to look at where's your energy going and where's it coming from.
Yeah,
So if you've got all this massive energy going out, where's it going? Who's it going to? Is it just your job? Is that the big energy draw on you? Or is there other things? And then where do you get your pot refilled? How do you get your pot refilled? And can you be your true self? And if so, where? Is that at work? Is it with your partner? Is it with your family? Is it with your friends? Where can you be your true self? Because that really recharges that energy.
absolutely. We are just who we are. And if we're trying to be someone else, that's putting on a social mask,
Mm-hmm.
pretending that, that you're someone you're not. And why do we need to do that? We are all unique individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone on this earth is a unique individual.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Absolutely.
be yourself. I mean, if someone can't accept you as your true self, then that person probably isn't meant to be in your life.
Yep. That's
End of
okay.
story. Walk away.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing that ties into that is, I am who I am, but I also like people in my life who challenge me to grow,
Mm-hmm.
and to become better and to look at my blind spots and those kinds of things. But I want somebody to do that in a gentle, kind way, not in a, blah, 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 kind of obnoxious, rude, decharacterizing, de-energizing way, but someone just, you can feel safe with,
Yeah.
that they can say, have you looked at this? And have you thought about doing this a different way?
Yeah.
And I think that's just so helpful.
Yeah. I mean, having that partner, that person that you're with being respectful
Mm-hmm.
of you and of themselves, being kind, speaking in kind, compassionate, caring, and loving ways, and demonstrating those
Mm-hmm.
characteristics as well. I mean, that can just make the human soul just soar. And it's
Yeah,
a beautiful gift that we not only give ourselves, but we can give back in return.
I agree. And I think as you do some of those changes, you start talking to yourself better, kinder, more gentle. You don't aren't constantly self-deprecating and criticizing yourself and calling yourself stupid or ugly or whatever those words are that come into your mind. You start saying, you know what? I'm a good person. I'm a good woman. Yes, I have some areas I can grow, and that's okay. I love to grow. Um, but I'm a good person. I care about others. Whatever those attributes are, that you just recognize those and say those to yourself. Because the language that you speak to yourself is hundreds of times a day versus what someone else may speak to you. So it's very
Absolutely.
powerful.
Absolutely. And a nice little addition to that is, and this took me, I had a similar situation as you in my younger years. This exercise took me until I was 56 to be able to do. And
Mm-hmm.
that was to stand in a mirror and
Mm-hmm.
look directly in my own brown eyes
Mm-hmm.
and say, I love you,
Mm-hmm.
and mean it,
Mm-hmm.
really hear it. And, those words on their own are powerful. But then you do those other talks to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's okay to talk out loud to yourself. Fine, who cares? Well, whatever. Other people do it too. It's all right. And not
Exactly.
because other people do it, we have to do it. But if you it's using all the senses.
Mm-hmm.
So you're visually looking into the mirror
Mm-hmm.
and seeing, the words spoken, you're feeling them, you're hearing
Mm-hmm.
them. Try it on, see how it works, what it does for you, because the physiological change will be enormous, won't it?
It is. Yeah. And I think those are some things that hopefully can prevent other people from going down, kind of a medical spiral like I did,
Yeah.
and having to spend the next 10 years digging myself out of that hole that I had gotten myself into. Um, but it, even as deep as you get, and I also later had colon cancer, but came out of that, very well as also. And I think a big part of that was my attitude at that point, and that I was taking care of myself. I was rested. I was whole again.
Right. That makes a lot of sense when every aspect of who you are is in a harmonious state.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're going to be able to deal with challenges that come up a lot more effectively and efficiently, and without having the panic and the stress that's
Right.
attached to it. So brilliant words of advice, Meg. Honestly, that's just so you obviously made a full recovery. You look
Yes.
happy, you look healthy, and you look just stunning. So
Yeah, I went to my doctor
congratulations.
actually about a month ago and had a physical, and absolutely everything is in with range. I lost my weight, a total of 70 pounds, because I continued to put some on after my divorce.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, and I'm active physically. I do all kinds of really good things for myself and my husband, and so yeah, I full recovery beyond where I probably ever was.
Oh, congratulations. What a gift you gave yourself
Mm-hmm.
and the world,
Absolutely,
you know,
absolutely.
and your family. That's beautiful. So I like the quote that you sent along. May I read it for you?
Yes, please.
Meg's quote is, kindness is choosing love over hate, light over darkness, and compassion over judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Because, those things will bring us down and defeat us if we allow it. But you keep the kindness and the love in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Anything's possible.
Both for yourself and for others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Big thank you.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed this conversation.
Wonderful.
And I think, listeners, how can the listeners get in touch with you, Meg?
They can reach out to me at Meg at firstqualityconsulting.com, or they can go to my website, which is www.firstqualityconsulting.com. And those are probably the best ways to do it. On my website, I have a number of different services. I also do healthcare consulting, life and leadership coaching, and then natural healing. So they can certainly look through and pick the page that they'd like to check out.
Absolutely. And when we post the segment, I'll have all of your links.
Wonderful.
There. And listeners, honestly, you really need to get in touch with Meg. This woman you have the most calming aura around you that I have really enjoyed. And you have been just a joy to interview, because you've helped me to remain calm and just centered and focused, which isn't always my state, but one of those things people need to work on, right?
But, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I really appreciated the conversation and you sharing openly. And listeners, you really need to get in touch with Meg. Don't be shy. I'm sure she is very willing to help you and to have a conversation with you. So, Meg, thank you very much for being such an exceptional guest today. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to talk with you.
You're very welcome. Listeners, get in touch with Meg, and don't forget that on Powering Through Life, we motivate the world through conversation. We'll see you again next time. Thank you for listening to Powering Through Life, where we explore life's challenges and learn valuable insights from my guests about how they have powered through their lives to survive and thrive. We can learn incredible lessons by sharing and motivating the world through conversation. You can access all of the Powering Through Life episodes on my website, teresasims.com, YouTube, Facebook, and Spreaker. So join us again next time for another inspiring conversation.